Well, let's go ahead and get ready to get started. So just a reminder, everybody, this is our last session of this experiment. So I hope all of you will be able to join us for the picnic immediately after worship at Ritter Park. I'm going to say, what's reasonable to say? 12:15, 12:30? Okay, I'll text Ben to make sure the food is delivered at that point. So does anybody be reminded what they said they would bring last week? We all good for that? Yeah, if you signed up for dessert, probably that should have already been made. You can, some of you signed up for chips. So I think like the Birds, the Hensleys, the Dyers chips. That's, if you forgot chips, you can swing by someplace, pick them up. I know we got a couple people. Flannery said they would do drinks. The Gardner said they would do drinks. So dessert people were the Sizemores, the Finleys, the Farrars. So yeah. So if you what can bring one of those things, I think desserts probably we're doing okay maybe with. Angelia said she might like to bring a dessert as well. So otherwise, just grab some drinks or some chips and join us for the picnic. So part of the picnic is just simply to have fun together. I'll be grabbing some stuff out of the Fab Lab to take for kids. For younger children, there's plenty of stuff at the playground. Ritter Park has got one of the best playgrounds around. And then someplace in that piece, near the end of the eating time, we'll try to carve out a few minutes, just talk about this experience. What worked, what didn't seem to match up so well, just some your own thoughts about this so we can process this as a staff and as a education commission to kind of think what we need to try to do next. So anyways, all that will be helpful. I've enjoyed this time with you all. I hope it's been helpful for your own Bible study and time. So anyways, yeah. So anyways, I hope everybody will be at the picnic and we'll have a good time together. So here you go, Jess. To you. So the last session, again, following on with one of Jesus's stories. Brett, here you go. This is the parable of the dishonest manager, which is a fascinating tale. And we don't oftentimes do this story. Here you go, Chris. And I think possibly it's because we can't figure out what it means. And when we get to the ending of it, you kind of understand that piece of it. So I think one of the important things is to remember is this parable immediately follows the parable of the prodigal son. So, one of our favorite parables comes this one. And the parables of the prodigal son and the immediate ones before it were also matched together. Parable of the lost sheep, parable of the lost coin, all those were lost parables. The prodigal son is a lost son. So here comes this next parable. And I think also this parable kind of continues on this theme of a parable of grace. This is a very different parable of grace than the lost sheep, lost coin, and lost son were. So let's jump into the story. So on the second page, you get the scripture passage. Let me get my page turned around here. So Jesus kind of just jumps right into it. So there is this rich man who catches word that one of his managers has been squandering his money. Now, this is a charge that is not substantiated. There's no evidence, and the word used for charge is a particular word that is similar to the word that means devil, suggesting that the charges were hostile or done with an evil intent. Now, that in and of itself may not mean that they're false charges, but it might make you wonder that, right? If someone has an evil intent or a malicious intent about bringing these charges, maybe they're not quite right. So I think when I read this verse, the first verse, I like to make sure I read it. There was a rich man who had a manager, and malicious charges were brought to him that his manager was squandering his property. So this is the setting of the story, that these charges are brought. and we have these malicious charges brought about this man. So by framing it this way, it is framed as classic class warfare, right? So the boss is a 1%er. He's a rich rancher. He's got lots of money. Yeah, Micah. And now he has this manager, this regular working guy, who has the luxury of having this position that's a little bit step up from just somebody who's a day laborer. But he's still in the peasant class. And these malicious charges are brought to him. And his boss says, come and give an accounting because you can no longer be my manager. So before he's ever had a chance to give his side of the story, he knows he's getting fired. So this manager is not even having a way to defend himself. He deserves better, especially if you're thinking about the people who are listening to the parable for the first time. Okay, so we have these two main characters in the story. You got the rich man, the 1%er, and the regular working guy. So we have this selfish billionaire and this man who's just like everybody else. So the classic warfare is there, particularly when you think about the people Jesus is preaching to. Most of the people listening to Jesus are peasant farmers, okay? The plot is going to swing quickly and profoundly. So we know the manager is getting fired on malicious charges. That's the setting of the story. The tension comes in verse 3 when he says, I'm not strong enough to dig and I'm too ashamed to beg. So the problem in the setting is impending unemployment is now exacerbated by his pride and his weakness. This guy is no working stiff. He's worked for this rich man too long, right? He's now becoming like the rich man. Yeah, I can't really do that hard work. So what does it mean for the crowd of peasant workers to hear this man's confession? He's too weak to dig means he's too good to work like the rest of us. He has no honor. Maybe too proud to beg is admirable as long as he doesn't have a starving wife and children, right? If he has a starving wife and children, then he can't be too proud to beg because he's begging for them. But too weak to dig, let's just say it, that's just outright shameful for the people who are listening to the story. So right off the bat, the man who is their favorite, who is like them, now is a shameful version of them, someone that we don't want to think about, right? Too weak to dig, too proud to beg. This man is a shame upon our class of people. So his plan then to figure out what he'll do for his future is to change the debt that's owed by a few tenant farmers to his boss. Now, the manager would have had authority to do this. So rich people back then, like rich people today, don't do their own stuff. They have employees, people who do their stuff for them, right? That's the way the system works, whether we're talking 2,000 years ago or today, right? Elon Musk doesn't do his dirty work, right? He's got somebody else to do that for him, whatever that is. So this man has the same thing. His manager handles his accounts. And so he says, here's what I'm going to do. I'll find out who owes my boss a lot, and I'll slash what they owe, and then they'll owe me, right? I'll be doing a favor for them. So the first person comes up, and he owes 100 jugs of olive oil. And what this means is this person was to handle the olive grove, and he's due to make sure he has a harvest of 100 jugs, okay? If he comes short of that, he's going to be in debt to the owner. If he gets right at 100, he's worked the whole year for nothing. His hope is to get a little bit more than 100, so it makes an eager living and can feed his family for another year. That's life in the first century. So the manager says, take your bill and we'll make it 50. I mean, if he was expecting to get 105 gallons of let's say gallons, jugs of olive oil, and he has a 5% of those he can sell to feed his family for a year. Now he's got 50 jugs that he's going to have that he can make money off of. He's gotten not just a bonus for the year, he's gotten 2 or 3 years or more of work with this move. Then the person who owes 100 bushels of wheat now only owes the rancher 80 bushels of wheat. The farmer mentioned the story, and this doesn't mean there aren't more farmers. Okay, there's story, there could be more people in this, but these are the ones mentioned in the story. For each of them, this is an unexpected, enormous gift. Their narrow profit margins have now been blown wide open, and they're going to get several years worth of work in this one season. If the manager loses his job, as he's been told, now he could expect a warm reception, at least from these tenant farmers who might help him get over this edge until he can find another place to work. So everything shifts quickly by this. Also note that in the minds of these farmers, because the tenant farmers, they don't know anything that's going on here. They don't know about the backstory going on. All they know is that their owner has now given them a very generous gift. They don't know the manager's doing this. In their minds, this owner who they've been working for, slaving for some time now, his generosity is opened up. So right now, in their minds, the owner is the most generous person they can imagine. So it's not just the attitude of the manager, it's the attitude towards the owner that's changed for these people's minds. At this point, we'd expect the owner's wrath, right? He's been swindled. He's been played for a fool. He can't go back on the manager's word because that's the manner of the business. Your manager handles your stuff. And now these farmers are counting on this big bonus they're going to have. And for him to go back on it would really, really be bad. That would be bad honor in the first century world. So now he's kind of stuck. We expect him to extract vengeance on this person, right? And we've seen this in some of the other parables, right? In last week's parable, in Matthew's version of the great feast, when the king sees someone's not dressed for the wedding banquet, he has the person thrown out where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. 2 weeks ago, we saw that the rich person there sent the unforgiving servant away to be tortured until he could pay everything. So we would expect the same kind of thing here, right? Here's what you expect the rich people to do when they get hurt and get dissed, right? But no, the next plot twist happens when this rich man has appreciation for this manager. He commends the manager for his shrewdness, and the story is turned all the way upside down. Another plot twist happens. By the end of the story, the good guy, the working manager, is a bad guy. He's somebody who lies and cheats. And the bad guy, the super rich guy, who we all begin to hate, and who at the beginning of the story is acting like a rich billionaire, he is firing somebody without even due process, now becomes the good guy. He's like saying, okay, tricky manager guy, you can be, I like what you're doing here. The whole thing is flipped upside down. We began with a story of a rich man who is firing an employee without giving him a chance to defend himself. We end the story with farmers, tenant farmers, who receive several years' worth of work as a bonus from the generosity of the business owner who has been conned and who sticks by his shrewd manager's actions. And we have a manager who possibly has saved his job. He has at least received a commendation from his owner, from his manager, from the owner of the property. And we have a rich man who possibly was once hated, who now becomes a generous hero. Harshness and dishonesty are turned into generosity and grace. It's like the kingdom of God has come to earth. It's all grace. And the funniest thing of all, we don't know what to do with the parable, right? We don't know what to do with it. as middle class, upper class Americans living in a prosperous society. We don't know what to do with this. Like the prodigal son story, which just preceded this one, Jesus doesn't finish the tale, right? In the prodigal son story, we don't know if the older brother went into the party or not, right? He's outside, upset, mad at his dad for being gracious to his brother, and he's outside, and the story ends with him whether he's going to go inside and finally join the party, or if he's going to stay outside sulking and holding a grudge. In this story also, we don't know what's going to happen. Did the dishonest manager save his job by cheating his boss? And his boss saying, well, that's pretty shifty. I didn't know you had it in you. Or does he still lose? Like the prodigal son story, we have to answer that, right? We have to finish the story. And how we finish the story says something about our theology, says something about how we understand God's grace in our lives. Now, what's fascinating is that Luke tries to unsuccessfully frame the story at the end, but evidently he's never satisfied. So if you look at the bottom of that page with the scripture page, I've got 5 different conclusions that Luke includes here, as if Luke kind of takes all these different statements of Jesus and says, well, if I put all of them up there, maybe one of them will stick, right? Maybe one of them will work. So I want you all to be thinking about those statements. Which of these works for you as a conclusion of the story? So we have these 5 statements. The children of this age are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the children of light. I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of dishonest wealth, so that when it is gone, they may welcome you into eternal homes. Whoever is faithful with very little is also faithful in much. So whoever is dishonest with little is dishonest in much. If then you have not been faithful with dishonest wealth, who will entrust you with true riches? And if you have not been faithful with what belongs to another, who will give you what is your own? No slave can serve 2 masters, for a slave will either hate one and love the other, or be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. And then the final conclusion is the Pharisees, upon hearing this story, ridicule Jesus. So he says to them, those who justify yourselves in the sight of others, but God knows your hearts, for what is prized by humans is an abomination in the sight of God. So if you're having problems getting the story, the meaning of what this parable means, you're in good company, right? Luke couldn't figure it out. So I want you to wrestle some with those statements at the end of the parable to see if you think any of those really accurately conclude the parable as you kind of handle all this. Does God know the hearts of the rich man and the dishonest manager, and knows there's more here than meets the eye? Good question. All right. Any questions about this presentation? Anything to be clarified before you head off to your groups? Yep.
Is it possible that the dishonest manager is the Pharisees?
I mean, it's possible, but then you're shifting from a parable to an allegory. So, and that's the real question. So allegories are stories where different characters of the story mean something. Okay, this character in the story is that person, and sometimes we end up doing that with parables. But in the true attitude of a parable has one punchline, a one moral of the story. So if you read it as a parable, then no. If you want to do it as an allegory, have your everything's on the table. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yep, great question. Any others? All right, go in peace. Oh,
because I messed everybody
okay.
up last week.
All right, you do that. You do that.